Okay. Again, welcome everyone. This is our Meet Our Community panel focused on our learning services team. So I am excited. Oh, somebody's asking, are people able to hear me okay, or is that just with, okay, sorry. Not sure what the connectivity issue is. We are excited to be in conversation with you. Like I said, I have our learning services team here, and they're happy to talk about the work they're doing to support teaching and learning at Giddens School. So I'm going to start with introductions. I'll introduce them one at a time, and they can just kind of give you an overview of their work. I think we'll start as a place to start this conversation. We're going to talk about, let's focus on how this team supports teaching and learning in the classroom. So these folks do a lot of different things, or their work is quite dynamic, and they're providing support in many different ways in the school. But one of the things that they're doing is working directly with all of our students and pushing in directly into the classrooms to provide that support. So in no particular order, I want to introduce you to Lindsay Berg, who is our school counselor. Hi, Lindsay. And I'm wondering, could you just start by talking about the kind of work that you're doing in the classroom and how you see that in support of the other kind of objectives that teachers have in terms of supporting their kids?
Sure. Hello, everyone. This is my first year at Giddens, and they've had a school counselor here full time. This is the second year they've had a school counselor, which is really awesome. So it's been such a fun experience because I get to be in the classrooms all the time. At the beginning of the year, I was in every class every week teaching social emotional lessons and partnering with teachers on a variety of social skills that they can be able to work on with their students. And then as the year has been progressing, I've kind of scaled back a little bit on the classroom lessons and still going in every other week now for many classes. The younger grades, I'm there every week just because, especially preschool and pre-K, there tends to be more of a focus on social emotional learning, since that's pretty much a lot of what they're doing. I'm doing more groups. So I've been working with small groups. I'm starting up some Worry Warrior groups. Say that 10 times fast. And I'm working on some executive function skills and some different coping skills. And then I have lunch bunches, which are social skill groups for kids that just need a little extra support in that. And then I also work with students one-on-one and teachers, providing different professional development. And of course, the most important is, not most important, but one of the more important is working with families. And so I have gotten to know a lot of our community through just conversations on Zoom or in person or different events that have gone on throughout the year so far. So pretty involved with everybody. And what's nice is Giddens is such a small community that we get to really work collaboratively. Like everybody here that's on my team, we all work together in a variety of ways and setting up systems for kids, especially if a student has, a learning difference. We partner together in creating a plan for them and supporting them with that. So there's many different things, and you may have questions that I didn't touch upon, but that's kind of an overview of what I do.
Thanks, Lindsay. Appreciate it. Katie, can you talk a little bit about your role and how you're supporting teaching and learning in the classroom as well?
Hi, everybody. I'm Katie. I'm the math specialist. This is my 5th year at Giddens, and 2nd year in this specific role. So I think, like Ken alluded to, I have a lot of behind the scenes work that I do with teachers and with systems to support teachers. I do a lot of co-planning with them and coaching of teachers and finding resources to support them. But then as far as student-facing work, I am pushing into classrooms most of the day, every day, to support the work that the teachers are doing. So when kids need any kind of support in math, maybe some extension work, or maybe they're struggling to keep up. Our goal is to keep them in the math class as much as possible and support them in that class instead of pulling them out. That said, I do some pull-out work. If there are kids in several different classes and they're all struggling with the same concept, then I will pull them out, once a week or a couple times a week to work with that group on that specific targeted thing. So for example, right now I've got a third grade word problems group. We're working on making sense of word problems and figuring out an equation, especially as they're getting into like multi-step word problems. And then that group will end once it feels like they don't need that anymore. It's a very fluid thing. So yeah, a little bit of pulling out into small groups or one-on-one work, but mostly I'm trying to push in and just support the work that the teachers are already doing. I'll just say, like this morning, for example, I was in a second grade class. They're working on 3-digit subtraction and involving borrowing or regrouping, taking apart a 10 so that you've got enough ones. So I'm sitting there on the floor with a couple kids who need some extra support with that while the teacher's leading the whole class. Just that kind of gives you a visual of what that might look like. I mostly work with 1st through 5th graders. A little bit with kinders, especially starting around this point in the year. So much of the beginning of kindergarten is just figuring out how to be in school. And with the early childhood kids, I'm really more supporting their teachers than I am them academically, unless a specific need comes up.
Thanks, Katie.
Hmm?
Hi, Corey. Could you share a little bit about the work you're doing in classrooms with students and supporting teachers as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Corey. This is my 6th year at Giddens, my 2nd year also in this role. Similar to Lindsay and Katie, a lot of my work is done as well with teachers thinking about ongoing planning, curriculum design with technology integration. But when it comes to student facing, my work shows up in helping to support technology integration inside of projects, units of study, thinking about student support with potentially co-teaching a lesson or demoing a lesson with technology integration, as well as supporting those ongoing projects. So for example, right before break, our 1st and 2nd graders were working on book reviews. And so we turned those into kind of a Reading Rainbow style book review. We did recording, we did editing, we produced a video for those. And so it was helping support classroom teachers in that, and then pulling groups to do the recording and then producing those movies. Coming up, we're going to be doing a 5th grade book podcast. And so book groups are going to be reading the book, and then they're going to be producing weekly episodes, and we're going to be recording, editing, and producing those podcast episodes and sharing those out with the community to follow along. So, so my work shows up a lot of different ways when it comes to interacting with students. That could also just be a student has maybe something going on with their technology or Chromebook or equipment, and helping to support that directly in the classroom, or also doing occasionally I come into the classroom to do some lessons focused around digital citizenship or acceptable use, or thinking about how technology shows up in research. A lot of our upper grade level classes do a lot of work around research curation, understanding and finding information online, and so supporting lessons around that. Additionally, I run an enrichment focused on coding and computer science. And so right now I'm working with one of the 1-2 classes, and we're doing work on computer science and coding. And so, so I interact with students in a variety of ways, as well as thinking about that ongoing curricular design and implementation. So.
Thanks, Corey. And then we have Colleen, who is our literacy specialist. And Colleen, if you could just share a bit about the work you're doing with students.
Sure. First, I want to just say that thank you for explaining everything that you guys do. It's amazing to see you in action. And I just think about like me in elementary school and wishing I had a Katie, a Lindsay, a Corey to help out with that kind of thing. When I was little, I did have a literacy specialist though, and that's what inspired my profession. What I do is I pull out students often to support them in literacy, but I also support in the classroom with kids who need a boost in reading or writing skills. So I'll go in the classroom, and usually during writing workshop time, students are working independently on their projects, and teachers are supporting with spelling, with their questions, helping them if they're stuck. So I support in all grades for that. And kindergarten is just really getting started with that. So encouraging them to try to write words, and in kindergarten, we do a lot of like invented spelling. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to starting to get words on the page. So that's something I do a lot with writing in the classroom. For reading, I do a lot of pullouts to support students who are behind or just need a little boost to catch up to the rest of the class so they don't fall even more behind. So we practice literacy skills like decoding, phonemic awareness, knowing the sounds of the letters and the word in words. And we also will practice fluency skills so students become more fluent and expressive readers. I also help with assessments, so we have a comprehensive idea of where students are, and I help students get the support they need. So we also have Title I services for some students, and I help schedule that and work with the teachers on making sure students are getting all the support that they need.
Thanks, Colleen. Yeah, we're, we have obviously this great team in place that is doing so much really great work supporting not only our teachers, but our students, of course, and our families to make sure that our kids are thriving and continuing to grow and develop in really positive ways. And it's just so great to have this really dedicated group of folks doing that work. I'm going to open this up to a conversation. I imagine you all have kind of wonderings and trying to understand these roles and how your child might experience these folks in a school setting. So happy to open it up to questions if folks have those.
I don't have to go first, but I do have a question if no one else does right away. So mainly for probably Colleen and Katie, but when you're working, what is that process in collaboration with the teachers, and what does it look like when you're identifying the kiddos that might need to be either pulled out or pushed in? What does that process look like, and how involved are the parents?
I can take this one, Colleen. We're in the same room. We gotta.
Oh, okay. Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's a great question. We do ongoing assessments in both math and literacy, specifically reading. So for example, in math, kids will take pre-assessments before they start a unit. They'll also take a beginning of the year, just comprehensive assessment to see what gaps they may be coming in with or that they just didn't retain over the summer. And often in the fall, I'm not starting working with kids right away specifically in pull-out groups. I'm trying to just support the whole class and see where we're at. And then after about the first unit of math, the teachers and I will have a better sense of who might need some extra support based on their data and just classroom observation. And then we'll work just, in a meeting. If you're wondering kind of how that flow works, we'll talk together about, yes, I'm seeing this from this kiddo and we think that they are showing some similar things as this other kiddo. Maybe we combine them in a group for a few weeks. And then we'll let parents know that that's what we're thinking. And typically parents are like, yes, please. Great. And if they don't want that for any reason, that's totally fine too. It's definitely a collaboration. If we're seeing a broader array of concerns over a longer period of time, and that's impacting math and reading and maybe social emotional, then that becomes a bigger team meeting. And we'll definitely have parents involved from the get-go in that and in making a plan to make sure we're meeting all of those students' needs. We have many kids like that. And we've sort of, as a team that's on this call, have each of us serve as kind of not a case manager, but just a coordinator for a certain number of kids. And we're in charge of making sure that any action steps that we've planned for with the family are being put into place and that we're checking back regularly. that answer your question?
It does, yes, thank you. Mhm.
I think to Aaron's question, I think mine goes kind of hand in hand. I'm curious if you can comment on how what do you benchmark against when you make the assessments for children that need some maybe some help or a different approach to addressing literacy and math.
I can talk about math and then you can jump in with literacy. We, the assessments that we are using for math come from the curriculum that we have adopted. That's called Bridges in Mathematics. It's a very widely used curriculum in public schools and independent schools. They have what's called a comprehensive growth assessment that we typically give at the beginning of the year and the end of the year so that we have an apples to apples comparison of like some holistic growth. There is also a pre-assessment for each unit and a post-assessment for each unit that helps us capture, does a kid already know all this and they're going to need some extension support before they've even been taught it, or at the end of a unit, are there kids who still have some gaps that we need to go back and fill in? In the upper grades, I don't know what grade your own kids are in, but we are switching to a different math curriculum in 4th and 5th grade based on just the other one wasn't really meeting their needs as well. And so for those grades, we're using their assessments in that curriculum. We don't do state testing like public schools do. We do Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, 4th and 5th grade, do a standardized online test once a year that is often required for middle school admissions. And we have kind of a complicated relationship, I would say, with what we think about that and how much value to put into that, but it is sometimes a requirement. And so we do it in 4th grade kind of so they've got some exposure, and then 5th grade so that they have their actual results for middle school. I think that the assessments we do in our house are far more important as far as telling us what kids know and can do. So.
And for literacy, we do a variety of assessments to see where students are. And that includes seeing if they know the alphabet letters, consonant sounds, short vowel sounds, different reading skills like reading long vowels, reading R-controlled vowels, reading multisyllabic words. We also do spelling tests for every student and phonemic awareness tests and a reading inventory where we just listen to them read and track what level they're at. We use FNP, Fountas and Pinnell system right now, and that just gives us a sense of what level they're at. And if we do want to do support them, it's usually students who are behind grade level. So for example, if the grade level 1 starts at level E or D, if they're behind that, we want to really get in that support so that they don't fall further behind. And we use all this data to figure out where to start and what they know.
And it sounds like we do nothing but test when you hear all that. I promise that's not really how it feels for kids, I don't think. I think doesn't feel very high stakes.
Yeah, it's like 10-minute test. So it's not very.
Two questions. One, just wondering, I think you said, Colleen, Title I needs. What is that? What are those?
Title I is a support from public schools, and it's for students who live in certain neighborhoods that are considered a Title I school neighborhood. So if they're living in the same neighborhood that a public school can get Title I support, then they can also get Title I support at Giddens. And we have someone from the public school come in to support a group of these students. So they have to qualify by their neighborhood, and assessment scores also have to be lower to qualify.
And is that something that's beyond what is normally part of the curriculum that you offer?
Yeah, it's
okay.
beyond. It's not for everybody. It's only for selection people, and I coordinate that. Just
Okay.
part of what
Okay.
I do.
And one other question, do you find that, you know, however much testing or whatever sort of you incorporate into your curriculum, do you find that the kids are well prepared to then go into a middle school that maybe does put more emphasis on testing? Is that ever an issue or?
Ken, you might have more insight into that than.
Yeah, I do not hear from our partner schools, the schools that we send, the middle schools and middle high schools that we send students to, that our kids are unprepared academically. If we were hearing that back, of course, we would need to respond to that as a community and address those concerns. So our kids go and they're successful in all of these different schools, and there's a lot of I would say, you know, at least in the independent school community, there's a lot of philosophical alignment. These are largely progressive oriented learning communities. So there's just a tremendous amount of alignment with the schools that families are selecting into from Giddens School. And even our families that choose their public option after 5th grade, which we always have some families that select back into their neighborhood school. When I connect with those families, I always do check-ins on our 6th graders, our graduates, and see how they're doing. You know, I honestly, the thing that I hear that is the most challenging for kids is that challenge into like that homework experience, because that doesn't really sit in a pronounced way. It certainly doesn't sit in our school in a pronounced way, and it's not typically pronounced in some of our peer schools. So that's an adjustment, but that's a normal adjustment for kids to make into middle school. And there are some other adjustments that are just kind of, you know, part of that process of kind of stepping into that next school experience. What we hear back from our families is that our kids are highly collaborative, and they have like just really strong set of social emotional skills. So they're really great at being friends and navigating challenges, being growth mindset and their orientation around teaching and learning. So we are definitely in conversation with our community of other schools as part of this independent school community. It's a pretty small community in Seattle, and we all are have good relationships with one another and are paying attention to how our kids are doing across time, right? In these other spaces. Oh, sorry, I muted myself. There's a question here I just want to address in the chat. For pre-K kids, do they have touch points with you specialists? Does pre-K start working on literacy or math in some form, or does that not start until kindergarten or 1st grade? So I'll leave that to you guys to.
I just started, writing in the chat. I don't work with pre-K often. I have done assessments if the teacher requests them, but really pre-K students aren't expected to know the alphabet yet. They might start with being able to listen to rhyming sounds and know like how a story goes, like starting to know that like there's a beginning and an end, but they're not really expected to have all that until they're going into K. So I start with kindergarten, probably around this time of year is when I'm really starting with kindergarten, but sometimes I'll start earlier.
And for math K and pre-K, we do have the same curriculum. Bridges does have a pre-K level. So they are using that curriculum, and the teachers, I think, really like it. It's very thematic. In September, the theme is apples, and there's lots of game playing and just building basic number sense. And if they do assessments less frequently, but they do them, and those are interviews Like, can you count 5 objects? How many bears do you see? That kind of thing. So my role in that is less being in pre-K and more helping teachers think, okay, what extra games do we need to add into this? Because this one's too easy for the kids, or they're not getting this concept yet. So let's play another game or tackle it another way. So I'm more in the planning with teachers and supporting assessments if needed so that they can just keep teaching. But yeah, less direct touch points with the kids themselves. Yeah, but and like very literacy rich environments, tons of read alouds, lots of songs and chants and poems, just a lot of exposure, I guess.
I have a question if nobody has one before me. Can you hear me, Ken?
I can hear you. Yeah, take it away, Rick.
Okay. Hey everyone, thanks for making time for this. Quick question. I might be pushing too hard or in the wrong direction for my kid, but how does the Giddens team use technology, if at all, for the really early stages? Like my daughter will be in pre-K if we attend. I was just reading something about the 3 types of literacy, which I'm an old new dad, so it didn't really strike me that like there's components of it. There's information literacy and media literacy and technology literacy. Does that play into the structure at all at the early ages?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Rick. So especially at the early childhood level, preschool, pre-K, my work with them is similar to Katie, a little bit of less direct touch points with kids and more thinking with teachers around how that technology might show up in their classroom. For example, with some of the pre-K classrooms, we've done work with some digital microscopes that they have. So in the fall, a couple of our pre-K teachers, we have these little orb microscopes that are quite hands-on and user-friendly. So the pre-K kids were using them to kind of twist to zoom in and out, and they had it up on the projector on their smartboard, and they had cut open the inside of a pumpkin, and they were kind of looking at some of the components of a pumpkin and kind of dissecting it a little bit, taking some videos and screenshots. That's more in a group collaborative setting, and so less of maybe specifically on a device, iPad or Chromebook, like that might be in the K through 5th grade. And so more of their technology interaction comes in kind of that group form, whether it be reading an online story, using the document camera to maybe look closer at, a book or a game or an activity, or even some of those other components, like I mentioned, using the microscope. Some of the classes might use some audio books to read aloud a story or listen to a story. We've had our preschool pre-K classes who've brought in guests online in a Zoom call and maybe had a mystery reader come in on a Zoom call or connect with a family member in another state or another country and kind of share a little bit about their family dynamic. And so we think really intentionally about what developmentally that exposure is like in an early childhood setting, giving them opportunities to engage and interact with technology, but in a space and a setting that feels developmentally appropriate. And then when it comes to thinking about some of the other concepts, for example, I mentioned coding in computer science. During December, during Computer Science Education Week, we do an hour of code where our K through 5th grade students are engaging in coding and computer science activities. And the preschool pre-K teachers were actually interested in thinking about what that might look like in their classrooms. And it was less about, again, getting on a device or an iPad and more about they were doing some work with directional coding and giving directions of finding objects in the classroom or pointing to certain areas or directing kids to move in certain patterns. And so those are just some of the ways that technology starts to show up, because the reality is that students head into kindergarten and 5th grade, those experiences and the exposure to technology is going to increase, but we also want to think about what that looks like at an early childhood level. So I don't know if you have more questions with that, but Yeah,
That's
happy
awesome.
to take more if you do.
Yeah. Thank you for the thorough response. I appreciate it.
There's a question in the chat. Do you also provide services if kids are excelling and need additional challenges?
I feel like I'm talking a lot, but yes, I will. I can start by speaking to math. Yes, we do. I will say we don't have like a very predetermined approach to this. It's not like, oh, if you're excelling and you're already meeting the standards, you're going to do X other thing that's different. It's a lot more nuanced, and just things get decided in between me and the teachers and figuring out what each specific kid needs depending on their grade level and what their learning profile is. But yeah, we have about 4 different programs or resources that I will commonly use to help teachers extend the learning for those students. I think philosophically, we are not a school that ever just puts a kid in the next grade level up of math. Does that make sense? Like some schools do that. They just, a 4th grader would just do 5th grade math. And that's not our belief around how math communities should work and how learning happens. Because sometimes it's just not quite developmentally appropriate, even if the skills are there. So instead we kind of try to deepen the learning of that grade band and extend it a little bit, but they're still participating in their math class with all the other kids. We think it's important to hear all kids' voices in like a math discussion, for example. And then once the main portion of the lesson is complete, then I'm supporting teachers in differentiating the activities that the kids are then doing once they go to partner work or group work or independent work. So most kids are doing the same thing that's on grade level. And then a few might be working with me to get some support with that. And then a couple others might be actually doing a different thing at that moment that I've pre-planned for them because they don't need to do what the rest of the class is doing that day. Yeah, and we also have some computer programs that are, I'm going to forget the fancy term for it, but that adapt. So we have a Dreambox is one of the programs online that we subscribe to. And so every kid has a Dreambox account, and that adjusts every time a kid does it and gets things right. It moves them along at their own speed. So it self adjusts. And we have some other programs similar to that we use to help differentiate. So again, it's a little hard to articulate because it's just specific to the kid in the moment, rather than being a full-blown, you're going to do a different program.
And with literacy, students are actually in groups with like grades 1 and 2 are together. So the grade 1 students will have access to grade 2 material because they're exposed to it. And the teachers really do a great job differentiating and meeting students where they are at their reading level. So students who are excelling can access and learn more and keep going. And students who are have areas for growth, they also get what they need in the classroom. And they're really met where they are. And I'm sure Corey can talk about some technology that we use to help with that too. Like, but Corey knows more about the technology piece.
Yeah, Katie mentioned Dreambox. We have aligned with math, and we have Lexia set up with our literacy. There's also just a variety of platforms our K-5 use. Google Classroom is used in 3rd through 5th, and Seesaw is used in K-2 as opportunities to provide additional material and content to students as a learning platform for them, whether it be online applications or programs or websites. And so there's quite an array that the teachers use to supplement in and then provide in with differentiation inside of any specific unit study or subject or content area. So, and that just might depend on the specific subject or curriculum unit. So.
So maybe changing directions from some of the academic questions, I think I'm a little bit curious to hear some more about some of the themes that you bring into the classroom, Lindsay, specifically around, I mean, I feel like I hear about social emotional learning a bit, and I've read some materials on it, but like make that real for a kindergartner, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. There's a lot of, I'll just share what I've been working on with the school overall throughout this year so far, just to give you an example. I really like to focus on emotions and understanding what emotions are and feelings and identifying those feelings. And we use a curriculum called Zones of Regulation, which helps identify with, if you're feeling in the red zone, you're really angry, and, what are tools you can use to get back to the green zone, because the green zone is where you're ready to learn, you're calm, you're focused and all of that. And so there's a variety of different like colors. You kind of mix in a couple different things, because that could include, if you're familiar with Inside Out, the movie from Pixar, we bring in some of those themes of what are those emotions, or what are the tools to, when we're at those heightened emotions, how can we kind of come back to a more of a baseline? And so teaching that across the board from preschool all the way up to 5th grade. Also working on problem solving. That is just interpersonal skills 101. And how can we solve problems with the playground or in the classroom or even at home, and having different tools. So we use Responsive Classroom here, which is kind of just threaded in throughout the day in all the classrooms, where they have morning meetings and they get to just build and work on their community building, and work on some of these skills, as well as having end of the day meetings as well. But then in that, it's talking about, well, if you have a problem, you use something called a bug and a wish. So it bugs me when you poke me and take my pencil, and I wish that you would stop. So we give them a lot of language in that problem solving as well. And then outside of, just the emotion management and the problem solving, it's recognizing there's mindfulness embedded in that. And how can we recognize that we need to be able to take a break? What can we do to be able to take a break? How can we be able to make a friend? How, when you're talking about kindergarten, what is a friend? A friend is someone that shares, doesn't just say you need to play with just me this whole time. And, there's so many different, I could talk all day about this, but that gives you a glimpse as to some of the different areas that we're working on. When you think about like 5th grade, I'm working on a lesson or kind of a unit right now on healthy friendships or healthy relationships. And what does that look like? And so, you're talking about how to be a friend when they're younger, but now it's like, okay, are some of those friendships that you always should have, or, what can we evaluate that, or, really appreciate that too. So you name it. I mean, I teach manners in preschool. Like there's so many different skills to work on in my realm, and it really just depends on the need in particular communities too. So does that give you an idea?
Well, I'm curious to be a fly on the wall for the manners in preschool. But yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
To my panel, are there things that you're engaged in this year, or aspects of your work that maybe we haven't touched on that you think our families might appreciate hearing about? We can kind of pivot to some of those things if anything is coming to the surface. And of course, families, you're welcome to keep bringing your questions to us as well.
Earlier this year, we did a community learning both for the teachers and for the parents on ADHD. And some of those kind of hot topics. Anxiety is something that we're looking to do in the spring. So providing some education, not just for the kids, but also for the adults in our community. So those are just some areas, and depending on, needs of other hot topics or areas of need, we might provide some more of that. So yes, and neurodiversity in general, I love that. So we're doing a lot about that as far as educating the adults. We're, as a staff, reading a book right now, and I don't want to speak for Rajaswari Sachdeva, who's our diversity and equity and inclusion person here at school, but we're reading a book called Disability Visibility as a staff, and that's just been really fascinating because it provides, we're creating a professional development around that and having conversations around what that looks like. And then when it comes to neurodiversity, there is actually parent affinity groups where you get to meet and have like a lunch every month. And I've been able to join a couple of those where we talk about what are the things that we would like to see here in the school. Do we need to have more education around neurodiversity? And what are some areas that we could support students here in our school environment, or we see that there's gaps or holes? And so, you know, for example, I was just talking with Corey. This is more around like hearing ability, but, you know, we were talking about how we might need to provide some different resources for teachers here to help students be able to hear better. So just the things along those lines, we're constantly looking, it depends on the needs, right? And so we've addressed them as they pop up, but also thinking forward to what else can we be doing to make this better, to educate the community in that.
I think we're getting close to time, but we are happy to stay in conversation if there are other questions kind of coming to the surface for you. You know, I just want to be explicit in saying that this team of folks are fully engaged in with all of the students in this community. So they're not just touching, or their impact is not just, you know, addressing certain students, but they are working with all of our kids and certainly supporting all of our teachers as they continue to think about how to lift their learning goals or their teaching goals in the classroom. And we're really fortunate to have this great team in place supporting our kids and families. We are, as always, I extend the invitation to you. If questions come up along the way through your discovery of Giddens School, you should always feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to make myself or some other folks at the school available to you. We are continuing this Meet Our Community series through the month. Our next series, our next panel is tomorrow, and it's going to focus on our kindergarten program. So I'm excited about that. So if you're able to join, please do. Otherwise, just check back to that homepage. I'm going to be adding these recordings to that homepage, so you can always have that as a resource. And like I said, we'll be kind of touching on all different aspects of our program through this series throughout the month. And I do have to reschedule our specialist teacher panel that we had to unfortunately postpone, but I'm going to get that back on the calendar as well. So stay tuned for that too. So thank you all. I appreciate you spending some time with us, and we're happy to have been in conversation with you today. So have a great day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.